Don't believe the propaganda lies of the genocidal terrorists. That's all it needs to be. You're looking for a solution in Gaza? The solution is very simple. Just teach the Gazans that it's not okay to murder Jews.
Our public institutions, our political framework, our bureaucracy being filled with people who have a bias against the existence of Israel.
What starts with Israel will move on to the rest of Western society. And these organizations that now pretend to have these bona fide credentials of only hunting the Jews will be hunting every single Canadian soldier. And every single Canadian soldier should understand, when they are quiet as they hunt the Jews, tomorrow they will be coming for them. And that's what needs to be understood.
The insidious...
Our battle is a battle for Western civilization.
Absolutely.
And not only for Israel. Take that mask off, understand that it's all about politics. It's all about pandering to these genocidal terrorists. And if you allow them to grow and fester, they will undermine the entire fabric of Western society. That is their goal. Understand it.
Wake up.
Wake up.
I am Israel Ellis, and this is The Unfiltered View, a companion to the wake-up call. Please show your appreciation for this podcast by liking it, sharing it, and following me on IsraelEllis.com and on Substack. I want to talk about, let's talk about the international community. I'd like to take a little bit of a different course of direction. I'd like to talk about the ICC, the International Criminal Courts, because we talked about narratives, and we talked about the idea of these narratives having an international impact and having the international impact on policy, on narratives out there. So let's start off with, who is the ICC?
So the ICC, I actually wrote my thesis for my law degree way back then in the mid-90s on this idea of an international criminal court that would be responsible for the prosecution of war criminals. I didn't write it because I necessarily thought that that was such a panacea. I wrote it because when you look back on the experience of the Second World War, with all of the glory of the Nuremberg trials, they maybe touched about 7% of the Nazis who were involved in the extermination of the Jewish people. That was unacceptable. This idea of having a court that would actually function on a full-time basis, that would prosecute the worst of criminals, was, I believed, a great idea. And it is a great idea. Where did it become corrupt? When suddenly the ICC, the statute, the statute is the law that forms the basis of the court. When that law is a product of the countries that joined the court, so you have a democratically passed law that says, well, for Jews to live in Judea and Samaria in their ancestral homeland, this is now a crime.
Right. We've taken a system, we've taken an altruistic, actually very much needed system, and we've gone ahead and we've taken a system that is actually and we've become victims of that very system, because that system is being influenced by people who don't represent the very democracy, the democratic values. So in fact, the ICC, we could agree that the ICC is really become corrupt and is ineffectual. But actually, this is where it gets really important. There are countries who do respect the ICC.
So the problem with the ICC is, or the problems with the ICC are very long. They've been very ineffectual. They spend a lot of money for prosecutions with very little success at the end. Their evidentiary standard that was employed by the prosecution was sometimes very, very lacking.
How many Hamas terrorists have been prosecuted by the ICC?
So I have to precede this argument with or this answer with a clarification. The answer is no Hamas terrorist should ever be prosecuted by the ICC. Never.
Okay.
It should never happen. Right?
Okay.
And why do I say that? Because the court, the ICC, only functions on the basis of states joining the court, and then they defer from their jurisdiction to the court. They say, I want you to employ justice where I have been unable to do that. Israel, because of the politicization of the statute, is not a member of the court. There is, let me say this clearly, there is no state of Palestine. It never existed, and it should never exist.
So
that
therefore,
could ever join the court, and therefore no Hamas terrorist could ever really be prosecuted in the court and should never be prosecuted. I believe that any type of collaboration with the ICC is a fundamental mistake. The greatest trick that Karim Khan, who's now dealing with his own personal problems with his assistants that he did or didn't have some type of an engagement with, let's leave it at that, when he decided to indict Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Def.
so they were outside his jurisdiction to do so.
Who are you fooling? You're only trying to pretend and to feign even-handedness so that you can then prosecute Prime Minister Netanyahu and then Defense Minister Gallant and say, well, look, I'm being even-handed.
Are you saying that ICC does not have jurisdiction to
Absolutely
prosecute? Hold on, to prosecute Netanyahu?
Zero. They have zero jurisdiction over what happens in Israel because, again, what their whole argument is based on this idea that there is this state of Palestine that doesn't exist, that joined the court that should never have been allowed to.
Give me an example of someone that has been properly prosecuted or who is authentically prosecuted by the ICC or legitimately prosecuted.
The people who have been actually prosecuted by the courts, and this was the court's reputation, right?
Or charged. I mean, there's a difference between charged and prosecuted.
Charged and prosecuted are different. So we'll go through the different stages. Basically, you had the preludes to the ICC were the Commission for Rwanda, the International Criminal Court for Rwanda, and then for Yugoslavia, right? You then set up the ICC. Who was prosecuted by the ICC predominantly? Black leaders of countries in Africa who had butchered their own populations.
Okay.
Right? You have all different types of people. Probably the most famous out of them, the names are really irrelevant. Probably the most famous of them was Omar al-Bashir, the dictator of Sudan who really did murder hundreds of thousands of people. He was indicted but never prosecuted.
Okay.
It never got to the actual stage of prosecution. And so out of the 20-odd prosecutions that they had, they failed to get convictions in 16, 17 of their cases.
Right.
People were acquitted. It's a colossal failure.
Where I want to get to with the
only Western leaders that have been indicted are Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Right. So I want to get where is that respected? That indict like where could if Netanyahu showed up at what airport and got off a plane, which country would he sort of be detained?
So let's clarify just to make sure that we understand what stage we're at in that process as well. Prime Minister Netanyahu and ex-Defense Minister Gallant have not yet been indicted. What the prosecution did was they asked the court to issue arrest warrants, almost similar to the terrorists. You have a crime, you go, you ask for an arrest warrant, and the court, prior to the indictment, issues an arrest warrant, and that's the stage that we're at. The agreement of all member states with the ICC is that if the court issues an arrest warrant, they are required, to respect that arrest warrant. Where did it come up? Straight on collision, Omar al-Bashir. Omar al-Bashir, whilst being under an arrest warrant and indicted, goes to a meeting of the Arab League in Jordan. Jordan's a member of the court. Jordan said, we're not arresting him. He has sovereign immunity. And there is then a whole discussion that goes along as to what are the requirements of the member countries. And in essence, every country, the member of a court, is required to act upon and implement the arrest warrant. Whether they actually do that or not is then subject to the instruments that they enacted in order to adopt and implement the statute in their national court.
I'm getting to this because I want to deal with what's going on in Canada. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who are otherwise known by the acronym of the RCMP, has recently confirmed the opening of a structural investigation, I don't know what that means, into alleged war crimes committed in the context of the Israel-Palestine conflict. While no individual charges have been laid, this announcement has raised questions for Canadians who currently serve or have previously served in the Israeli Defense Forces. And it goes on, and I've got a briefing here that has been done by Secure Canada, which is a human rights action group, and has talked about this. But this has become a major concern right now within Canada. We've got many lone soldiers who have valiantly fought, some of them making the ultimate sacrifice, for the IDF and for Israel. We've got a website now today in Canada, and there are websites all over the world, absolutely insidious, disgusting websites that use, of course, public information, and maybe, the idea of they're very, very careful. You and I have talked about that privately. I'd like to talk about that here, but they're very careful in collecting that information. They're making lists. They're hunting Jews. They're making lists of soldiers who have enlisted
at any
and
stage
served
in the IDF.
And now we are being told, or it's being sort of, the rumor is that there might be, that there could be some type of secretive investigation going on, that there could be at some point in time that these soldiers are going to be considered war criminals. So couple of things I want to talk about, because there are people who are listening to the Unfiltered View who are lone soldiers and who want to understand if they've got something to be worried about. Let's get to that right away. First of all, the investigation from the RCMP, is it an actual investigation? Do you know anything about that? Is it just sort of like rumor mill, or is it actually happening?
So what appears to be the situation with the RCMP is that they are gathering evidence on, as they say, like this is the source of all evil, but it's the source of what they say on the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Not between Israel and these genocidal terrorists.
Right.
Not between Israel and the genocidal terrorists who
I don't know who
murdered
Palestine is. I didn't know. I wasn't sure at what point did Palestine become a state. I didn't realize that. But it actually is documented between Israel and Palestine.
So the RCMP has invented Palestine.
Right.
They've invented Palestine, a state that doesn't exist. Instead
Ignorance.
of saying it's a war of civilization, of democracy against barbarism. So it's the war between Israel and Palestine.
Yeah, not the war, and this is an important distinction. We're talking about the same war that is between Israel and genocidal maniacs and terrorist organizations that are listed as terrorist organizations in Canada. But instead of calling them that, again, back to language, we're calling them Palestine.
We're calling them Palestine. So we're really... We're elevating their status from genocidal, homicidal terrorists to Palestine. And we're saying that Israel, the democracy that's fighting against this genocidal organization that embedded itself over 20 years, digging a tunnel system that is larger than the underground system in
300
London.
miles, over 300 miles of, just to give you a comparison. Toronto, I think, has less than 50 kilometers of tunnel system. Toronto, major city like Toronto, 300 miles of tunnels.
So
the question
Israel is now fighting against these genocidal terrorists who have dug these attack tunnels and
which
entire
the
terrorist
RCMP calls them Palestine.
They've hidden rockets in schools, in hospitals, in nurseries, in playgrounds.
But we know that.
Everywhere.
We know that. The question is there a validity to the fact that the RCMP has actually opened up an investigation to research these things?
Absolutely not.
So they have not.
So why do you have to give the introduction? The introduction is essential to understand when do you have a war crime, right? War crime is when you go out with the intention of systematically destroying a civilian population.
So hold on, Maurice.
Not fighting a war.
But one second, Maurice, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I didn't ask you whether or not they have the basis for an investigation. I'm just curious if you've heard that there is an investigation ongoing. We'll talk about whether or not there's any concern about that or whether there's any legitimacy behind that. But what I'm curious to know is, do you know through your sources if the claim made right here by the Human Rights Watch Group that there is discussion that there's a secretive, which I find also disturbing, and that they call it in Palestine, we got to that, but is there an RCMP investigation? Do you think that there is something going on in Canada that is looking at the idea that there are Canadians who've gone abroad to fight in the IDF as lone soldiers who may or may not or could be involved in a war crime? Do you think such an investigation is happening? That's all I'm just curious about.
So without breaching any duty that I have as a lawyer, I can say something like this. I have reason to believe that the Trudeau government has decided that Israel's actions in the Gaza Strip, whether it be past actions or current actions, do constitute a potential war crime, and they are therefore gathering information of all kinds in order to support that claim.
Now, so
I have unfortunately seen,
and that would have commenced.
Some of that analysis.
I just want to clarify that has commenced with the Trudeau government, but it's continuing on with the government of Mark Carney. Is that correct? That attitude?
There seems to be a constant in the position of the Canadian, I would say, governmental.
They're looking for something.
Organizations.
They're looking for something.
So they believe that their ally and friend Israel, as they present themselves,
they want to find. They want to find it.
We are committing war crimes.
Right. They want to find it. There is definitely a pandering to the political. The fact that we've brought in nearly 10 million people, like a third of the voters of Canada now, is really many of them are actually Arabs and Muslims, and that is a known fact. And there is a pandering to the political spectrum, and the liberals are definitely out there trying to find that. So through the RCMP, it is rumored. I don't know if these investigations are allowed to be secretive. I thought they were supposed to be public. I thought we lived in a open democracy.
Almost every investigation starts off secretive.
Okay, fine.
Let's put that out there.
So chances are, so the fact is, chances are, is that you would agree, and you talked about in your position as a lawyer, are you representing something right now that you can't talk about?
So I am involved in some type of a proceeding, let's call it, that involves an accusation of Canada that war crimes were committed in one of these cycles of violence.
Against an individual?
Yes, they're claiming
who
that
served in the IDF?
They're claiming that, let's not get into too much details.
Okay.
That's how I understand that the position of the government of Canada seems to be that Israel has committed war crimes while fighting these genocidal terrorists.
And let's just make sure we understand what's happened. On October 7th, we had over 5,000 armed terrorists, and how they got armed and where they got all the funding from that. That's we talk about that, and I talk about that in my book, The Wake Up Call. Invaded Israel, brutally murdered indiscriminately men, women, children, babies, committed acts of barbarity to human bodies and suffrage, kidnapped and used hostages, over 250 people back into Gaza Strip. And we are talking about the RCMP investigating soldiers who valiantly and heroically fought off these Hamas terrorists, went into Gaza to root them out. Gaza that has bombs and tunnels and is shooting missiles at Israel constantly, endangering the lives and murdering. And the RCMP has a secretive, potentially secretive investigative unit because there is a political underlying undertone where the government of Canada is looking to find somebody and to prosecute them for war crimes against Palestinians, aka genocidal maniac, terrorist, lovers of life, death cult. And this is our lovely neutral government of Canada, an ally of Israel.
I will say, unfortunately, very bluntly, they've decided that the Jew for defending himself is guilty of a crime, and now they're just gathering evidence. They've already shot the arrow.
The Jew for defending himself. Isn't that a crime everywhere? Isn't that a historical crime? God help the Jew that defends himself.
Everybody loves the Jew when they were being murdered. On the 7th of October,
we love a good Jewish.
Everyone loved the
we
dead
love a
Jews.
good Jewish victim.
When the Jews stood up and said, you know what, we will not tolerate this anymore. We are going to kill our enemies before they come to kill us, or at least after they've already killed us.
This we have a problem.
Then we have a problem.
So, okay.
The Jews are guilty.
So do you think in the judicial system of Canada, let's just say that war crimes were brought against, maybe I put it another way. We have many lone soldiers, Canadians, who have come here to serve. And my son being one of them. Do they have anything to worry about returning to Canada?
So here's the dissonance that I would argue between the political statement that we believe that Israel has committed war crimes to the personal level of the individual soldier. And I would argue that they have almost nothing to worry about. These soldiers came to Israel. They bravely fought in the IDF against these genocidal terrorists. They didn't come to a militia. They didn't come to a terrorist organization. They came to an army that is shackled, literally shackled, by what I used to do. By legal advice to the army to ensure that they're fighting within
what is
the
unit?
confines
I write this down, but there is a special unit within the army that investigates war crimes.
There is the military investigations department, but before you get
what is the organization called?
It's called Metzach in Hebrew.
Right.
That's the military investigation. But before you get there, you have legal advisors from the Military Advocate General of the Israeli army that are sitting in all of these meetings. They're advising the commanders at all different levels how to fight within the confines of the laws of war. And that
so you're saying that it is a near impossibility for something like that to happen. However, we've seen it before, the Dreyfus affair. We've seen other sort of acts. You get the right government in, you get the right people in,
and the right judges, and
the right judges, and I talk often about the subtlety of anti-Semitism. I'm not worried so much about the outward acts of anti-Semitism. It's the fact that we have our public institutions, our political framework, our bureaucracy being filled with people who have a bias against the existence of Israel. We are potentially on the precipice of electing a mayor to New York who has made no secret about.
Who's a moron? Who says that he would?
Who's a moron? Another useful idiot.
He's not even useful. It's just a moron. I will arrest Netanyahu if he comes to New York. What a moron! But America isn't part of the ICC.
But it's a wake-up call.
You're a mayor. What jurisdiction do you have? You're a moron for saying that.
Let's hope he doesn't become mayor. I mean, this episode is being cast, and he's become the Democratic hopeful for mayor of New York. My bet is that he's not going to become mayor. I'm really hoping, but who knows? He could. New Yorkers
come to their senses and don't elect him.
Yeah, but the point is that he's even there. That we're even at this point shows the trajectory of where we're going. The trajectory of where we're going for all Western nations. I mean, I would think that we've got a lot of concerns. We've got a lot of work out there to do to change these narratives, to get actively involved in that voice, and to make sure we reverse that. But the fact is that we're here today, and it just takes the right situation to come into play. I don't think that. I think that the risk is low. I think for our lone soldiers today, you've said it, Maurice.
I would truly like to say, as opposed to the big headlines of the RCMP opening the investigation, and there's an ongoing investigation for war crimes, the actual exposure of individual soldiers, I would say, is low. There's not. I would say they don't have much to fear. Definitely those who served in the army, they didn't go onto social media and put up pictures of them committing war crimes.
But there have been reports internationally. There have been reports in Amsterdam, in other areas of the world,
Argentina, Cyprus.
There have been reports of Israel having to whisk away, having to contact lone soldiers and say, "Get out, stay in your hotel room." There has been a breach. You are known to be there. You need to follow these instructions. We need to get you out. Your security is at risk. In extreme cases, that has happened.
That has happened. It's been led by an organization called the Hind Rajab Foundation, and they are. Understand who it is? It's a Hezbollah recruited terrorist who's now running around the world saying, "Oh, the Jews are guilty," and the world is
listening. They're listening to this.
Playing to the sound
insanity.
of
It's just like
his fiddle, and they're saying, "Oh well, if there's an Israeli soldier here that happened to have operated in Gaza, and so he must be a war criminal.
He must be guilty of war criminals." And they are rallying. Are these just? Do you think these are crowds that are gathering? Or these? But I understand these are actually legal concerns within, like that those two soldiers that were whisked away from Amsterdam, that there's legal concerns that Amsterdam was going to arrest them.
Because you don't know how the courts will act, what they will do, even given the flimsy nature of the evidence that they've been provided.
And where are they getting this evidence from? They're getting them from lists that are insidiously being constructed, and they're being constructed through aggregating public information that is out there.
And social, and I have to say to their great misfortune, much of the evidence that they are providing and that they are collecting is the result of soldiers, IDF soldiers, whether it be Israelis or the lone soldiers, coming, breaching the regulations and taking cell phones into combat with them, filming themselves in combat situations, and then putting it up on social media.
So your message, I mean, this would be obvious, but your message to anyone who is a lone soldier in the IDF is don't do stupid stuff.
Don't do stupid stuff.
Right? Do not open up your phone on social media saying, "Hey guys, look at this guy over here." Right?
So on a previous occasion when I said that all you have to do is avoid putting things on social media, someone said, "Well, why don't you suggest them not committing war crimes?" Because they're not committing war crimes.
Right.
When you go and blow up the house of a terrorist because that's where he's holding weapons, that's not a war crime.
Is the IDF, though, reviewing these things with the soldiers? Are they talking about what is a war crime, what isn't? Are we educating our soldiers?
Firstly, 100% yes.
Okay.
Secondly, there exists already a mechanism. You're not going to find, unfortunately, an army in the world in which every single action is done 100% according to law. That just doesn't exist. And so you will have incidences where individual soldiers, based on their own individual actions, will commit actions that could potentially be a crime. And those crimes are investigated. Those crimes are sent to the military police to be investigated where necessary, prosecuted. And Israeli soldiers have stood trial before Israeli courts for actions that they carried out in war. I won't say war crimes, because war crimes need to be systematic for the whole thing.
But we certainly
when you have a breach of the law.
Right, and we certainly have our own internal systems. Again, much to the credit of Israel, we have our own internal systems to ensure that the IDF is and remains a moral army. And for the international community out there, you have to understand this, and this is very important, especially outside the echo chamber. Israel has its own branch, its own prosecutorial branch, its own judicial branch that actually critically looks at the actions of all IDF soldiers, many of whom wear webcams and things like that, just like the police in America wear these webcams, and they're looking at incidents on a regular basis. And Israel is a highly moral army. So we've got, but that doesn't matter. When you've got people out there who want to find fault and the dissonance, who call genocidal maniacs by Palestinians, that there is going to be a dissonance, and eventually there could be a problem for our lone soldiers. And I would think that we should do a lot more as a government of Israel. We should do to help them. Now, I want to ask you something, Maurice. There is a website out there. I've been doing this on a number of my podcasts because I'm absolutely frustrated that this can happen. There is a website out there, The Hunting of the Jew. I've talked about the indecency and the indecent exposure. There certainly is, I'm sure, a lot of legalities around what they're doing. They're doing it very carefully. FindIDFsoldiers.net. This bastard has got lists out there, and there's only one reason. I know why you have those lists, and I'd like you to. I know we know exactly why these lists are being made.
Hunt the Jew.
Hunt the Jew. You're hunting the Jew, buddy. How do we shut him down? How could it be legal? What is Israel doing about this guy? What is Israel doing about these people? Why are we allowing our soldiers in harm's way? They've done incredible service here in Israel. They've made incredible sacrifice. Why is it that why? Maybe I should ask the question. Is Israel doing anything to defend its soldiers outside of its borders?
So without question, yes. Israel is trying to do a range of different actions in order to secure the security of soldiers, ex-soldiers when they travel abroad. Now, some of it is...
But some of them live. I've got soldiers who live in Canada. They've done their service. They've moved back to Canada. They're living their lives in Canada. What are we doing? What is the Israeli government? What is the IDF? What is the Mossad? What are we doing to shut down these websites?
So to shut down the websites, I fear is an impossible mission. You have, unfortunately, terrorists of all brands that are running around the world. Some of them declared terrorists, some of them more openly terrorists. If you see the proliferation within Canadian society of Muslim Brotherhood affiliated organizations, then you can probably find many of the people who are driving this worldview that you have to hunt the Jew. That is probably the source of most of these activities. And they use and abuse Western democracy.
Sure, they use the right of free speech. Right.
They take freedom of speech, and they say, well, what do you want from me? All I'm doing is taking open source materials and putting it together on a name and shame
list. As a
list.
legal expert, what must we do to challenge?
To challenge these individual idiots, individual terrorists, there is, I believe, very little that can be done. You can try and stop their funding by proving that they are acting on behalf of terrorist organizations. You can try and expose who they are, what they are. That Hind Rajab is a Hezbollah terrorist who's now running around the world accusing IDF soldiers of war crimes.
And people are listening to them.
And people are listening to them because they want to believe that the Jew is guilty.
Let me tell you something. We know who you are. We know who are behind these websites. We're watching you, and we'll find you. Just like anything else out there that is hunting the Jew.
People should understand, and here's what Israel is trying to explain.
We'll expose you
over and over again. And sometimes there are people who are more receptive, and sometimes you're just falling on deaf ears. What starts with Israel will move on to the rest of Western society. Iran when Israel attacks Iran, we're not only defending Israel, we are attacking we are defending Western civilization against these genocidal maniacs. When they start hunt the Jew, tomorrow they will be hunting Canadian soldiers who have also done nothing wrong, because they are fighting against this genocidal terrorism as well. They will be the victims of terrorism. They will want to fight against terrorism. And these organizations that now pretend to have these bona fide credentials of only hunting the Jews will be hunting every single Canadian soldier. And every single Canadian soldier should understand, when they are quiet as they hunt the Jews, tomorrow they will be coming for them. And that's what needs to be understood.
The insidious...
Our battle is a battle for Western civilization.
Absolutely.
And not only for Israel.
The insidious, indecent acts of people out there don't think it's isolated to the Jew. It affects everybody. They come for the Jew. They come for you. It is about the freedom of the Western democracy, about the values that we hold true and we protect. And there is a difference between legal ramifications and indecent behavior. We don't need laws to govern decency. Decency is something that's innate to society. It's innate to individuals. And when people do indecent things, they are indecent people. That's it. And they're indecent people to all. Maurice Hirsch, really appreciate you coming on today. It's very, I'm honored, and I think there's been a lot that we've talked about, and a lot we can talk about more, and perhaps maybe again we'll talk again. If you had one message to our audience, if you had one message to the leaders of the world, if you had one message to anybody out there based on the things that you do, what would that message be on The Unfiltered View?
Don't believe the propaganda lies of the genocidal terrorists. That's all it needs to be. You're looking for a solution in Gaza? The solution is very simple. Just teach the Gazans that it's not okay to murder Jews. It's very simple. Because these people believe that it is legitimate, that it is justified to murder Jews, and they will then use any type of jargon, any type of jockeying that they can in order to justify their means. When they delegitimize Israel and criminalize the Jew defending himself against these genocidal terrorists, the goal is not to defend humanity. The goal is not to defend the Gazans. Where's Canada inviting all these poor refugees out of the war zone? Canada said at the beginning of the war, we'll take up to 5,000 people from Gaza. A year and a half later, how many have they taken? 300 people. It is a pretense. Take that mask off. Understand that it's all about politics. It's all about pandering to these genocidal terrorists. And if you allow them to grow and fester attacking the Jews, they will undermine the entire fabric of Western society. That is their goal. Understand it.
Wake up.
Wake up. That is their goal. Their goal is not to be integrated into Western societies and become the proponents of democracies.
It's the wake-up call, and this is The Unfiltered View, and I am Israel Ellis, and we thank Maurice Hirsch today for coming on the show and really appreciate it. And if we have any questions, we have different organizations that you represent. And what are those organizations again?
I work for the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. You can contact me via the
Jerusalem Center
for Security and Foreign Affairs.
Okay, great. And they deal with, their main subject matter is?
Israel-Arab relations, a bridge between the Arab world and the Western world.
And if people have questions, they can come, they can contact you.
Without question.
Thank you.
Happily on the email, send it through the general email of the center, and I'll happily answer.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you very much.
Maurice, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your clarity and your deep understanding of the legal and moral battles Israel faces every single day. Your work is a powerful reminder that justice is not just an idea, It's an action that protects life and defends truth. My name is Israel Ellis, and this is The Unfiltered View, a companion to the wake-up call. This is where truth breaks through the noise. Please don't be shy. Show your appreciation for this podcast by liking it, sharing it, and commenting on it, and by following me on IsraelEllis.com and on Substack. Thank you for tuning in when you had the choice to tune out.